I'll go and talk to a CRO or a global head of risk, and they'll tell me that they have 5 different systems. They're all calculating for different asset classes or for different desks. They're using different data sets. They don't calculate the same risk measures. And so they have a real challenge to kind of bring all of that together into one coherent and comprehensive view on risk. What we do is we're a global multi-asset system. You can put all of your lines of business on. You can look at a comprehensive view across all of your risks, but then you can also pivot. So you don't necessarily have to look by line of business or by account. You can look by industry sector across all of your desks and all of your asset classes. You can look at country codes. So some new tariffs go out. You can look at your exposure to the country that's just issued that tariff. Or someone invades another country, you can look at your exposures to those countries. And then on the sales side, especially for PBs, we have a tool where when I'm thinking about onboarding a new client, I can immediately upload their positions. I can look at the risk profile for that client, but then I can also look at the risk profile of how that client impacts my overall risk across my entire business.
What are the biggest challenges facing risk managers?
What we've seen over the last few years is that the frequency and the pace of market events and changes to political landscapes have really impacted the way that you need to do risk management. And so being able to react quickly to those events and have a system that supports you in that kind of decision making, both on the buy side for, say, a hedge fund or on the sell side for a clearer, has become more and more important to be able to protect yourself against those kinds of things happening.
How important is real-time risk monitoring?
We had a really good reminder a few months ago with the closing out of the Archegos saga. If you go and look at the official report for how that all went down, one of the really interesting things for me was that you had risk committees making decisions on data that was days, if not weeks old, on the Credit Suisse side. And so it's become super important to understand where your risk is in the moment. So when a stock starts to blow up, like Nvidia or GameStop, or a tweet goes out about some new political policy, you need to understand immediately what your exposure is against that kind of event, so you can decide if there's something that you need to do. It's not enough to find out tomorrow that you had a client with a problem or you had an internal prop desk with a problem. You need to be able to see it right away.
What are the limitations of traditional risk models?
HVAR is a very traditional tool that's been in use for a long time. It's a good tool. It has some really interesting insights that it can provide into your portfolio. But when you're using it, you have to really understand what's going into it. And it's all about the data. If you're only using, for example, 3 years worth of historical data, you've already rolled out of COVID. You're not seeing any volatility from COVID. So, for example, the SIM margin no longer takes into account the volatility from COVID. And then also it's about having really clean, really robust and consistent data to power that model. And so what we do, firstly, we have data going all the way back to January 2008. So that's 17 years of history, and in some cases all the way back to 2001. So you can pull in more data. But the other thing that we have is a feature called Stitchfar, where you don't necessarily need to do 17 years worth of calculations. You can take, for example, the last 5 years of history, but then you can stitch in a period from fall of 2008 or any other key period in history that's interesting to you and your risk flavors and your clients and all of that kind of stuff. So it allows you to be very specific and include all of the risk movements that might be relevant to your portfolio instead of just relying on, 3 or 4 years of history and missing out.
How do you modernize risk management strategies?
We give you the power to look at every single model that's being used, every single piece of data that's being used in that model, and a way to drill down and pivot across all of the different pieces of data in the system. I can look at a client, I can drill down to their strategies, I can look at their positions, or I can look at my exposure against, for example, an exchange or a clearinghouse or a CCP, and know before the end of the day, how much margin am I going to be called? How much margin am I going to call against my clients? What's my risk against that exchange? And this is a question that's come up more and more with regulators, where they want to know for the larger clearers and the PBs, how much risk do you have against this energy exchange in Europe? If they go bust, what's your risk for that exchange dying? And so we provide all of those ways of looking at pivoting your data and pivoting your risk to support your decision process.
What tools do you offer?
Having some really good software with very good models and flexible features and a nice UI that you can pivot around and use on a daily basis is super important. The other piece that we provide is a full data platform. So you have a global listed security master of 20 million plus instruments. You have all of the curves. You have all of that historical data that we mentioned earlier for historical VAR. You have issuer classifications, country codes, market trading hours, for a complete comprehensive set of data that we're maintaining. We're running corporate actions. We're listening to hundreds of thousands of notices from all the exchanges globally about what new issues are happening, how they're changing their data. And then we're processing all that for our clients so they don't have to worry about it. And they have a single comprehensive way of looking at all of the risk that they have. And then lastly, we host it. So you have a robust, secure, and scalable hosting where you don't have to worry about hardware, you don't have to worry about your database administration, rolling out upgrades. We support all of that for our clients, and we support clients from a two-man hedge fund all the way up to a tier one bank and their PB and clearing business.